this lecture, we will review the topic of sex for sale. We will go over the history of prostitution. This is a psychology course section in human sexuality. Often called the world's oldest profession, prostitution has been common since ancient times. Prostitutes engage in partnered sexual activity or sexualized interactions in return for money, material gifts, or some other form of payment. In ancient Mesopotamia, priests had sex with prostitutes. Ancient Greece featured legal brothels. Now, these are houses of prostitution that service political leaders and common men alike. Prostitution was also common in ancient Rome. And in the Old Testament, it was accepted as a more or less necessary fact of life. And it was more or less expected that many men would turn to prostitutes. During the Middle Ages and through the 19th century, prostitution was tolerated as a necessary evil, as legal brothels operated in much of Europe and were an important source of tax revenue. As the dangers of venereal disease became known, some cities shut down their brothels, but other cities required regular medical exams of their brothels' prostitutes. Now, prostitution was also common in the United States through the 19th century. Poor women became prostitutes because it provided a source of income at a time when they had few other options for jobs. Some prostitutes worked for themselves on the streets and in hotels and other establishments, and other prostitutes worked in legal brothels in the United States. During the Civil War, prostitutes found many customers among the soldiers of the Union and the Confederacy. Now, here's an interesting fact. The term hooker for prostitute comes from their relations with soldiers commanded by Union General Joseph Hooker. After the Civil War, camps of prostitutes would set up at railroad construction sites. When the railroad workers would visit the camps at night, they hung their red signal lamps outside the prostitutes' tents so they could be found if there was a railroad emergency. The term quote-unquote red light district for a prostitution area originated in the red glow that resulted from this practice. Many U.S. cities had legal brothels into the 1900s. Beginning about 1910, however, religious groups and other parties increasingly spoke about the immorality of prostitution, and in addition claimed that middle-class girls were increasingly becoming prostitutes. Their efforts succeeded in shutting down legal brothels nationwide. Some illegal brothels continued, however, and among their number was a San Francisco brothel run during the 1940s by a madam, which is the brothel manager or owner, usually a woman, named Sally Stanford. Her clientele included many leading politicians and businessmen of San Francisco and nearby areas. Like other early brothels, Sanford Brothel required regular medical exams of her employees to help prevent the spread of venereal diseases. Despite, or perhaps because of her fame of being a madam, Sanford was later elected mayor, can you believe it, of a small town across the Bay of San Francisco. Now let's talk about prostitution in the United States today. Estimates of the number of prostitutes in the United States range widely between 70,000 and 500,000. Streetwalkers comprise of 1/5 of all prostitutes. No one really knows how many prostitutes we have now. Prostitutes are not eager to be studied, and because their work is illegal, the federal government does not compile statistics on their numbers, as it does for physicians or plumbers, teachers, and hundreds of other legal occupations. One well-analyzed estimate put the number of female prostitutes at 70,000 and further concluded that they engage in an average of 700 acts of prostitution with male customers annually, or almost 50 million acts of prostitution overall each year. However, other estimates put the number of prostitutes as high as 500,000, with many of these prostitutes working part-time, whether or not they also work in legal occupation. So, in 2010, police and other law enforcement agents made almost 63,000 arrests for prostitution and commercialized vice. Most of these arrests were of prostitutes, but some were of customers. Women accounted for almost 69% of the arrests of these categories. Now, in my next lecture, we will go more in depth in regards to sex for sale, prostitutes, or otherwise known as commercial sex workers or hookers. We will go into the who, the what, the why, the when, and the where.